everyone, and thank you for joining us for our committee. Thank you all for coming out. We have a big crowd today. We're actually going to change around the committees. So first, it's actually going to be student services. So I'm guessing many of you are here for the middle school consolidation proposal, so we'll start with that. According to policy 903, public comment on matters of concern, official action, or deliberation is limited to 3 minutes. Should be directed to the entire school board following the announcement of your name and municipality. Under this policy, the presiding officer has the authority to warn or stop a public commenter when violation of this policy occurs. First on the agenda is the middle school consolidation. First, we will start with public comment. You do have 3 minutes, and I'll put this up so you know when you have 1 minute left. We will start with Abby McDonald. Go ahead.
Oh,
yeah, come right up there.
I just start whenever?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Abby McDonald. I am from the Percy Borough. I'm a 7th grade student from Pennridge South Middle School. Today, I'm here to talk about the possible closing of South. This is my opinion, and I feel very strong about it. South does not need to close. I do admit there are some flaws about South, but they're not major. The school is still functioning and has a great education system. North and Central both have flaws too. It's not just South. If South gets closed, it's splitting a full middle school in half and cramming the two halves into already full buildings. Imagine how uncomfortable that would be for the students and teachers. South is such an amazing environment. The teachers truly do care about all of their students, not to mention Mr. Renner and Mr. Donaldson, who are truly the best. If you think about the teachers of South, what's going to happen to them? If South goes away, they will lose their jobs. South is like a home away from home for most teachers and students. If students are struggling, the teachers will try so hard to help them understand and get better. If you think about West Rock Hill, which is where I also went, where are those kids going to go if South closes? Some of them live a bit far out. Trying to figure that out will be difficult. In conclusion, the possible closing of South will heavily affect students and teachers' lives, not in the best way. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Celeste Hall Huber.
Good evening. My name is Celeste Hall Huber. I've been an employee in this district since 1997, and I've worked in 5 different buildings. I'm here tonight to speak against the proposed closure of South Middle School. I want to begin with something that very few people in this room can say. I work at all 3 middle schools. As the 6th grade digital literacy teacher and the advisor for after-school coding club at each building, I have the opportunity to experience each school's culture. And because of that, I can say with complete confidence that South Middle School is the building that feels most like a family. It is the place that, for me, feels most like a home. At South, students are known, supported, and connected. The relationships are strong, the staff is cohesive, the environment is one where kids feel safe and seen. You cannot recreate that by simply moving students somewhere else. What exists at South is a result of years of intentional work, and closing the school would dismantle something that is working. Closing South would also increase class sizes across the district, and the research is clear. Larger class sizes reduce individual attention, weaken relationships, and negatively affect learning. Students in smaller classes show higher engagement and stronger student-teacher connections. Larger classes lead to less interaction and more isolation. These are not abstract ideas. They are predictable outcomes if South closes. I also want to address the claim of $1.9 million in staffing savings. That number assumes retirements that may not happen. And even if South closes, we are contracted employees. We do not disappear. We do not stop being paid. We would simply be reassigned to other buildings because students still need teachers, counselors, specialists, and support staff. So the idea that closing South eliminates $1.9 million in staffing costs is simply inaccurate. Another justification mentioned is the option of renting out the South building, but even if you rent it, you still own it. And when you own a building, you still pay for maintenance, repairs, utilities, insurance, security, and long-term capital needs. Closed buildings often become long-term financial liabilities, not savings. A decision like that affects hundreds of students, dozens of staff members, and an entire community must be based on accurate information, not projections. South Middle School is not a financial drain. It's a functioning, supportive, community-centered school that provides stability for students who need it. Closing it will not save you what you think it will save, but it will cost us something far more important: the relationships, the culture, and the sense of belonging that makes South Middle School a family. I urge you to reconsider this proposal, not just for the numbers on a spreadsheet, but for the students and the staffs whose lives will be directly impacted. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Lydia Raymer-Hunt.
Good evening. Lydia Raymer-Hunter, Percy Borough. I'm a high school teacher and president-elect of the Pennridge Education Association. I'm also a parent of a current 7th grader at South and 5th and 3rd graders at Guth. My 7th grader will be at the high school by 2027, but my current 5th grader will be entering 7th grade during this transition year. This transition will impact my family directly, and it will impact all of our children's friends. I asked my daughter, Acacia, what makes South special, and her first answer was the teachers and the other people. The community at South has its own traditions, special events, and unique flavor. As a smaller school, students may miss out on some opportunities, but the sense of belonging is worth it. The South teachers and staff here tonight, you are the heart of South. You make it special, and you are the reason my family loves South. As you discuss the future of our middle schools, I ask that you keep the students, the families, and the teachers of South at the heart of every decision. Thank you.
Thank you. John Seeger.
Thank you for the opportunity. I first want to note I'm a grandparent of a South student, and I well remember the last time there was an effort to close South and the debate that went on then. And fortunately, the board at that time saw fit to renovate it, and it has served the community very well since then. I would note that I live in a house that is considerably older than South Middle School, and it still seems quite serviceable to me. I do want to say that this board faces tough decisions, in part because prior boards did not make revenue adjustments, and so now you are in a bind for that and for some other reasons. So I know that the decisions are not easy, and I respect the fact that you have to sort out different options and priorities. I would note that by your own material, South is worth about $60 million. $60 million is a lot of money. Now, to continue to maintain it will cost money. But if enrollment projections, which are pretty level right now, happen to be wrong, and enrollments go up, it would probably cost in the neighborhood of $130 million by 2030 to build a new middle school. Maintaining South is a good insurance policy. It also provides for the students, because when you consolidate to fewer middle schools, there are fewer participation and leadership opportunities in certain areas for students potentially. I do want to highlight the fact that in the material that I've reviewed, including the Breslin study, there was one particularly, I would consider it an error, but maybe you can look at it methodologically. It claimed that South is the most underutilized school, but that's wrong. What you have to look at is the core capacity of a school, not just the number of classrooms. And when you look at it that way, South is actually the most utilized of the elementary schools, of the middle schools rather. Further, in terms of the more immediate needs for improvements, it has the least expenditures required over the next few years. There are other factors as well, as have been mentioned. For example, the amount that will be saved is, I think, pretty speculative, because some of those costs are going to transfer over. And if you do save money by consolidating instruction, you may adversely affect the quality of education. On a fairly minor note, I'm a little skeptical that you could accommodate all of the students who would now be going to the other 2 middle schools by the addition of only 2 buses. I put some material together which I shared with the board, and I appreciate your taking a close and careful look at this. I think it's a very valuable part of our community. It has been for a long time, and I think it still has a lot of life left in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Jen Hurley.
Hello. So I stand in front of you today as a taxpayer in the district. I live in Dublin Borough. As a parent, my daughter is in 9th grade at the high school, came through North. And as a teacher, I currently teach at all 3 middle schools that will be affected by this change. So my mother was a student at South. I have more than 35 family members who went through our district. I am an invested member of our community. So I do not have a prepared statement, rather a few notes that I wanted to share with you. So one question for you, and I would encourage you before making a final decision, please go stand in the lunch line at North and go through the lunch line and eat your lunch in the amount of time that's allotted with the number of students that are there right now. Consider if you would like that length of time that it takes you to actually sit down and get your lunch. Would you like that increased by 50%? How much time is left over for you to eat your lunch? Okay? Studies show having a good meal is integral to learning. Okay? And these students deserve to have 30 minutes to eat their lunch. That's already cut down by their travel time to the cafeteria and back, and now it's going to be cut down further by the time that they have to spend in that lunch line. I know my daughter, when I said something, I said, "What's the lunchroom like at North?" She was just there last year, and she said, "Oh my gosh, there's like no place to sit. It's crazy." And now you're thinking of adding 50% more to that. So I encourage you, go over, eat at the lunchroom, see what it's like, okay? Similarly, I go to a lot of events. Parking is very limited at both of these buildings, as is seating in the auditorium. When you go to an event, there's not room for family members. When they have choir concerts, not even all the kids can sit in and watch their classmates perform. They have to, the 6th grade choir has to sit somewhere else while the 7th grade choir performs. Now you want to add more to that. So those are all concerns that I have. I know new housing just went in Dublin, Sellersville, Bedminster. All those places are going to create more students, of course. And one final note, I went through Central Bucks. My elementary school closed the year I got done elementary school. Within 10, 15 years, they built 2 new 2-story schools to replace that school. So I urge you caution, long run, I don't believe it's going to be a good financial decision. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all that I have on public comment. Is that it? Okay, so then we will move on to Dr. Palmer, and middle school consolidation proposal.
Thank you. It's a little challenging, if you will, to present this evening. I just would like to say that I appreciate the show of support for South Middle School. And what I'm going to share with you this evening is not about South Middle School being a bad place, bad culture, bad place for kids. What we're presenting tonight is really about looking towards the future. So in my short time at the district, I've had an opportunity to enjoy South Middle School, be there to see South Fest, to experience it. And to me, it is a wonderful place for kids, for families, and it is the heart of that community. So I want to acknowledge that and the wonderful people that are here this evening, teachers. You know, I would also say that the principal and assistant principal, they're, I think, two of the finest administrators I've ever worked with, and I think they've helped to build a culture at that school that's very positive. I'd like to begin on that note. Let's talk about the background. So this evening, I'm coming to you with a proposal for a consolidation plan. And we're not asking you for a vote for this evening, but we'd like to explain the reasoning why we're coming to you with this proposal and to talk about a pathway moving forward. This is not new work. So as far back as 2017, Breslin, in connection with the Pennsylvania Economy League, conducted an enrollment and utilization study of the district. We followed that up with one in 2015. We presented the Pell enrollment study to you last February, showing declining enrollment. We also presented the Breslin utilization summary along with their recommendations in May of 2025. And the findings broadly are that the district continues to see declining enrollment. And in fact, we also have uneven enrollment and capacities across our elementary level and excess capacity at the secondary level, both middle school and high school. The findings of that study and recommendations for Breslin were twofold. One part was a recommendation of moving to full-day kindergarten. We're in fact continuing to implement our full-day kindergarten. Part of that was to revise our elementary attendance boundaries so that we could balance out that enrollment at each of those schools. Second was a recommendation to consolidate to 2 middle schools. This was a recommendation that they had made in 2017, that it could have been done at that time. However, it would have been costly. And the recommendation was that if the enrollment levels held up their predictions and that enrollment continued to decrease, you could essentially do this in soon as 25-26 school year this year with minimal impact and minimal cost. So this slide the board has seen before. This was a graph showing the enrollment projections that were done. Pennsylvania Economy League conducted 4 previous enrollment studies that you see here. And other than there was an overestimation in the 2013 study that was conducted, you'll see those gray bars. Our actual projections have been very, very close to their predictions. So the dark line there represents the actuals. And you'll see we've actually, on this graph, fallen below that actual value. So from 2016 to 2025, district enrollment fell by 1,185 students, from over 7,000, so 7,297, to 6,100. That's a 16% decrease over that period of time. So one of the things that Pell did was to look at our district population. So looking at those district population trends, I think one of the things we hear from people is, it seems like there's more people moving in. We see these houses. Is it true? Yes. We've had an increase in population looking at our census data from 2020 to 2022. The census did not fall on 2020 because of COVID. During that period, there was an increase in population from 42,000, almost 43,000, to 52,000 across all of our municipalities. During that time, the adult population grew by nearly 11,000. However, the school-age population decreased. That is, there were fewer school-age children during that study, during that time, that 20-year time period. It decreased by 1,533. When we look at the houses, one thing that I heard mentioned even here this evening was that there's housing booms. We see houses going up across the district, places like Dublin. That is true. And in fact, there are increases number of houses. So if you're looking there, the number of housing units in that 20-year period increased from 16,000 to over 20,000. However, during that time, the average students per household continued to fall from 0.422, and in fact, you know, if you go back into the 70s, it was even higher, to currently 0.332, and that trend has continued. So that is, for every one house, you're producing certainly less than one student, you're only producing 0.3. So, if we take a look at that, you know, there might be questions of why, what are those kinds of trends? Well, two key factors. People are having less kids, and the other point is there are retirees who are not leaving the district. That is, the percentage of people 50 and over has continued to increase within the school district boundary. So that I believe Pennridge is a place that people like to stay. It has favorable taxes, and they don't really have a need to move outside of the district once they retire or no longer have children. So let's talk about the projections. So shared with you in the Pell study, they had projections over 10 years, and they do it in two phases. They do a first 5 years. This is the main or primary section. During that period, we have the most accurate numbers. They'll do another 5 years out, the 5 to 10 year. That has slightly less accurate number, particularly for elementary. Whereas in secondary, high school, and middle school, we kind of already have those students baked into the system. So if we're looking at that trend over the next 5 years, by 2030, we're going to see a 450 student decrease, or about a 7.4% decline. And during the later 5 years, it's projected a continuing decrease of 46 students, somewhere around a 1% decrease. And we see that the total number of students flattens out as we approach 2030 and beyond. If we look at this by grade span, it's not quite the same. So we see that in elementary grade spans, K through 5, you see a dip and then a return. You see that in 24-25, we're somewhere around 2573, and by the end of 2034-35, somewhere around 2597. The 6th through 8th enrollment in middle school, again, we're going to see a moderate decline from 1390 down to about 1344. So we don't see any predicted increase in middle school levels over the next 10 years. High school will continue its decline. We already know those students. They're in our system, and you're going to see that continue to decrease at the high school. It's 2149, and we'll see it dip down to as low as 1,675 by 2035. If we look at individual buildings and regions within the district, if we're looking at north, central, and south, you'll see that back in 2016-17, when that Breslin study had been completed, our buildings were a high of 682 at central, so nearly 700, with south being about 500, 498. You'll see that between 2017 and the 24-25 school year, you saw significant declines. That is, 19.6, 30.4, and 22.5% across each one of those buildings. Projected into the next 5 and 10 years, see the only one of the schools that shows any increase is North, an increase of about 4.5 and 8.9%, where Central and South are both declining. South falling 16.6% in the next 5 years. It does show us essentially what we know, that the eastern side of the school district is growing. Dublin and Hilltown are the places we see the largest increases. In West Rock Hill area, Percy, Sellersville, we see essentially decreases in population on that side. And that was part of what we brought to you in looking at elementary rezoning project. In addition to the enrollment component that Pennsylvania Economy League did, one of the things that Breslin did was to update their secondary capacity and utilization. So they went through all of the buildings looking at how many square feet do they have, how many individual classrooms do they have, and looking at how many students they could hold. So if you just simply take the number of rooms, fill it to capacity, multiply that across, you get a total capacity for that building. And then what they do is they take some factor. Generally, they use about 75% for the middle school. And that 75% is to say, where's our target? So when you're looking at the building capacities on here, you're seeing the 771, 773, and 776. Those have to do with 75% of the target, of the maximum capacity of the building. So you certainly can't fill every classroom, every period, every day to the maximum. So that's why they use that number. So if you look at the current enrollments, the variance would indicate the excess capacity. That is an additional 296, 244, and 390 at each of the middle schools. As part of their recommendations, Breslin looked at the 3 middle schools combined with current utilization percentages, 46, 51, and 37. Based on current enrollments and their target capacity, that's 75% utilization that we talked about. If we were to take all of those students and put them into 2 middle schools, the maximum number would come out essentially what would be next year, 1,429 students. You'll see in the note there. That would be the highest level, which would be 715 at each one of those schools. Obviously, we're not talking about doing that during next school year. The enrollments are going to continue to decline. But you would see that even at that rate, the utilization would be about 69% of that target capacity, and we were shooting for the 75%. Historic maximums, if you go all the way back to 2016 and 17, Central had a maximum of 682. North had a maximum of 699. That was in 2011, 2012. And South's maximum capacity was way back in 2004-2005 school year with 531 students at that time. So if we were looking at this, if we look at the way, if you go back to looking at these projections, go back to our projections here. If we look at each one of these buildings and we look at the total capacity here, we're looking at 1,351 students by the 29-30 school year. If we look at these capacities, that would be about 670 students at each of 2 middle schools, not the 715. So it would be below 700. What are the factors? Breslin shared with us some factors. We talked about this. What are the things to look for in making a consolidation? So things you want to look at, what are the limitations? I think one of the things that stood out for us, we talked about South, was the lack of an auditorium there. I think that was one of the things that has been debated hotly again and again, with, potential costs. I think that was important fact that was brought up. Do kids at South Middle School enjoy their arts? Do they enjoy those programs? They do. But those students actually have to get transported to North and Central in order to participate in their music programs.
Some,
Go back. Good question, Rob?
no, they were just, I was,
Okay. Obviously, the impact of redistricting, thinking about transportation, program equity, there is going to be an impact on students. Enrollment trends, looking at how closely they've matched. Are they accurate? Are they the same across the district? And are there opportunities to repurpose the site once used? So are you looking at outside agencies, preschools, the Bucks IU uses facilities, adult education? Could we look for using it for something additional? So looking at a middle school comparison. So ICS, as part of their facilities assessment, taken a look at the structure of the buildings and shared some information about the facilities. You can compare them in terms of their square footage. The site acreage.
can you explain ICS? I don't think everybody knows what that is.
ICS is our engineering firm. ICS has helped to go through a comprehensive facilities assessment of the district and helped us to develop our 10-year capital projects plan. Some of the information will be from that. So you'll see the site acreage, Central with 54 acres, South with 22. North Middle School, the 141, includes the high school, so that's a little deceptive. The schools were built in 1998, 1963, and 1931. Central did not receive any additional renovations. North was renovated in 2006 and South in 1992. We have their replacement value, essentially an estimate of the total value of the building, and the 10-year capital expenses is really based upon some proportion of the overall replacement value. Below that, you'll see one of the assessments that this is shared with us through ICS. It kind of highlights where each one of the different systems within the buildings are. So you see some of them are, essentially in the red, which would mean that it's beyond its useful lifetime. It doesn't mean it's broken. It doesn't mean you have to replace it right now. But those are things that we would target. So that's another place for us to look and identify potential issues in the future. So in looking at this, we see South is certainly the oldest of the facilities with the smallest site and has significant capital needs projected into the next 10 years. So based upon the data, the reason we're bringing this recommendation to you, if we're looking at 3 middle schools, that South Middle School is the one that stood out to us as being the oldest building. It was renovated 33 years ago. It has the smallest internal square area and essentially the smallest site acreage. It lacks some of those amenities, as I had mentioned, like the auditorium. Although it does have air conditioning, it has very nice features within the building, a nice cafeteria and a renovated kitchen. It does lack some of those other features. Currently has the lowest enrollment, 381. I think it's actually a little smaller than that right now. Projected decreasing enrollment in the next period of time, and certainly has identified capital and facilities needs that would be required. So talking about potential benefits, when we're thinking about the schools, ultimately, I think the question will be, what's the right size for a middle school? How big should a middle school be if we're talking about a middle school that's under 400? If you look at the recommendations in the literature, optimally a school would be somewhere between 500 and 1,000 students. I think the literature tells us when you're beyond 1,000 students, whether that's a middle school or a high school, it drops off precipitously. Ideal for that range is generally schools below that 400 to 500 mark have a tendency to have essentially being too small for some robust electives, those opportunities for students. If you go above that size, you go something above 900 to 1,000, you're losing that personalization, the strong relationships, and that school culture. I think we have a tendency to get some separation. So when we look at the benefits, we kind of group them into two. We have financial benefits and we have potential program benefits. So those include primarily equal and equitable access for our students, comparable facilities and programs across middle school, expanding academic opportunity, potentially increase offerings, electives, and extracurriculars, and potentially improve student supports and instructional flexibility. In terms of financial, we look at operational efficiencies and costs. There is a potential annualized savings of somewhere in that 3.3 million range. There is reductions in capital investment, predicted avoidance of significant long-term facilities, and an opportunity for revenue generation. That is, looking for someone to kind of offset those. Obviously, things like utilities, upkeep, those could be covered by someone who's going to be a leasee of that property and take care of the facility. But I think for us, any recommendation would include not selling off of our property, but maintaining that as a part of the district. We would really only consider leasing that, and we'd have to look carefully at how we would lease that. Because I think important to us is keeping it as part of the community. It is a historic to community, to part of town, high school. It's incredibly important that that remains a part of it. And, you know, as some people have said, what happens if someone comes in and builds a giant housing development and we get, you know, 1,000 more students? I think that's all the more reason to hold on to that property. It's much easier to use. I certainly wouldn't say, let's sell it off and then, you know, 10 years from now, we have to build 120 or who knows how much. In my town, they're building a $200 million middle school. Breslin shared some estimated annual savings. These primarily come from reduction of personnel. There are utilities and operational expense savings. Those are in, you know, the few $100,000 range. There is a potential of adding additional transportation costs. Obviously, if we have walkers that would become riders, we'd have increased ridership. But I think the big important thing is, no, this is not something that we would want to incur immediately. These are potential and estimated savings annually that we could do over time. I think a big fear is we're suddenly going to close a school, and I think if you look at places like Philadelphia where this is happening, or in Bensalem where they're cutting positions, I think those things tend to terrify people. And obviously there's people out this evening that are, you know, that's the first thing on their mind. So I would say to the board that we are not interested in coming in and saying, we're going to furlough every single person at South Middle School. I think that is a terrible, terrible idea, and that's how you ruin schools and communities. I think what we need to do, though, is look very carefully at how we would move our staff, how would we position that, and how would we really utilize our personnel the best. We do have great teachers, great administrators, custodians, nurses, our nutritional services. And this is not something that we would be able to make happen overnight. But I think through attrition, looking at retirements, as resignations come through, I think we would look to reduce that staff. And I think this is something, when we went through this, that is reasonable and approachable as we go through that over time. Obviously, if you have X number of students, you do need X number of teachers. But there's efficiencies that you gain when you increase a school into a larger size. I think I talked about that when we talked about elementary schools. There's challenges to having 7 elementary schools. You could gain efficiency by increasing your school size. Would I say to increase it to 1,200 like Central Bucks had years ago at Cold Spring? No, I think that's a terrible idea. But I think through this measured reduction, you could realize those savings.
Brad, what's our yearly turnover as far as people leaving from the district for teaching and this, other positions?
It changes
Through
from year to
retirements
year.
and-
Obviously, we've had years where we've had, up to 20 people retiring. We've had 13 this year. We started out somewhere around 8 or 9, but we went up to about, I believe it was 13 in the end when I looked at that.
And how about people just leaving for another job? You know,
I don't have that off. That's certainly changed and has decreased over the
Right.
last 5 years, but I certainly don't know that off the top of my head. But I can talk to Dr.
Yeah, I'd like to,
Foster.
just to have an idea of how long it would take to absorb people like that, natural attrition.
Yeah, and I think this is something that, again, this is something you have to do in a measured and thoughtful way. Class size is a great idea. Should we, get rid of all these teachers and have giant class sizes? No. But I can tell you that in 2018, 2019, the class sizes at South in Math 6 were 30, 30, 29, 29, and 28. Those were 5 sections. If you look at it right now, we have 6 sections if you include accelerated, and those numbers are like 22, 20, 24. Those are the values that we have in there. So are there savings that could be done? Definitely, and there's efficiencies that we can gain. But even if you reduce the section over what you have right now, that's still somewhere below where you were in 17, 18. So those are things you have to look very closely at. You don't want to blow up class size. Above 27, things like that, those are clear that the impacts are not good.
Have you looked at that with these ideas as far as keeping the max size under a certain
Yeah, I
level?
think that's something we looked at. We talked about elementary when we looked at those class sizes. It's a little more challenging for middle school because there's different courses. If you're in a science class or a family consumer science class, there's a different number
Okay,
of kids
no, I
that could be in there, so we look closely. So we do have recommended values at the high school, and at the middle school level, and we can evaluate them. And I think every year, we're going to continue to do that. We're going to look at class sizes. Where are they? Are we getting efficient use out of them? If you have 2 schools rather than 3, it does make it a little bit easier. The more sections you have, the easier it is to spread those numbers out and even out and balance it. Obviously, there's many, many challenges to address. Primarily loss of a community-based school identity. There's people that love Selkirk. Their grandparents went there. They went there. Poppy Yoder Field is there. People graduated from there. And I think it's very important to honor that and keep that as a part of this community. Student transitions and a sense of belonging. I think the team at South has spent a long time building that up. I think it's fantastic, and that is a loss. That is a loss. And, to lose that culture is bad. But we have to look at what that looks like moving forward in the future. This is an opportunity. We're not getting rid of a special group of teachers. We are integrating them into 2 other middle schools to make them the best that they can be. And that is what we're talking about. There's obviously going to be serious redistricting impacts. Again, having just done this and still a part of it, I'm not looking forward to it. But if that is to fall to us, I think that is what we are going to do. I will have better maps. I have new software that will make that much easier for everyone. So I've heard a lot of feedback on that. Transportation and increased ridership. We know we've been struggling with getting drivers. That is something that's not going to go away, but we would have to add potentially 2 more routes. What are potential modifications to the remaining schools? I think North's kitchen was probably on the top of my radar. If you've been to the cafeteria, it's not big. It's not big for the kids they got right now. And I know years ago they had kids out in the hallway. I think that's something that we have to seriously look at each of those schools. And again, the biggest thing here is looking at our staff reassignment and relocation. How we do that is very, very important. We have good people here. How do we get the best out of it and use it? So, moving forward, what would we do? What will we plan to do? So, if this is to work and work well, we need a strong plan. So we will devise this series of tasks and have leadership that goes through this. We're going to have to look at programming and scheduling, looking at the middle school schedule design. You've seen one. We've brought that forward to you in the past for middle school. We need to look at changes to that to accommodate MTSS, to accommodate the changes we would want to make. And it would mean changes to teaming and the instructional structures within those buildings. Student, family, and community, we need a group that's really going to look at the student orientation process, building those cultures of new middle schools with new students, and reaching out to parents and the community and opportunities for them to have voice. Obviously, staffing, as I said, is a major one. We need to really go through, look at certifications, placement, look at what attrition rates would look at ideas for increasing those attritions, potentially looking at retirement possibilities, and staff reassignment. What would that process look like under this? As I mentioned, the transportation and boundary planning would be another group that would have to focus on that. And finally, facilities, operations, and logistics. We really need to re-engage with ICS to look closely at North and Central, their shared spaces, their classroom, their labs, cafeteria, auditorium, and look at any required renovations or modifications there might be. And when you're moving stuff out of a building, it is a huge logistical challenge. How do we move materials, equipment, supplies, resources from one place to another? That doesn't happen overnight. We have to look, is that something we outsource? Is that something we're capable of handling within us? And our middle school timeline, this is an ambitious timeline, but this is something that I believe we're very capable of. So we would begin this spring and into the summer with our working groups to develop those plans for you. We would look to develop some very detailed scenarios and look for community engagement with getting some open dialogue. We will need to hold public hearings and get significant input from the community. That's a legal requirement. And we would look for a board approval sometime after the middle of the year. We would look to finalize our staffing by May and our facilities and transportation planning by June. And then we would look for full implementation in August of 2027. And obviously, we have lots of questions moving forward. How do we support our students through a transition? How do we have scenarios that minimize our disruptions? You know, we want to look closely at those elementary boundaries. How do the feeders go through now? How would they go through in the future? What are those facilities adjustments? What about those staffing transitions? How are we going to manage that? And what are the long-term most appropriate uses for South in the long run? And how are we going to ensure transparency, compliance, and meaningful community engagement? Those are all challenges. Now, is this something that I think is fun to do? No, but I think this is something that is incredibly important for the district to consider this proposal. Part of running a school district is good stewardship. And through change, and in order for things to happen, changes do have to occur. So I know that this will be a long process. Lots of questions will be had. But again, this evening, I'm not asking for you to make a decision. I'm asking you to take a look at what this proposal that we're bringing forward. Are there questions from the board?
Before the board asks any questions, I'd just like to make a few comments. If you could go back to the slide about the staff and potential savings, okay, with Breslin's recommendation. So I want to go on record to state that we're not looking to close South Middle School, repurpose it, and furlough people. I want you to hear that from the superintendent of the schools here. That is not the objective. We want to do this in a deliberate, methodical manner where we find people, whether it's through attrition, whether there's a coming attraction in the future where we can offer a potential retirement incentive, where folks who maybe they're not superannuated yet, but they can maybe go out on an earlier retirement to incentivize it, to create boat spaces where people can be assigned, predicated on their certifications, to make this happen in a humane and dignified manner. I want you to hear that from me directly. So we're taking a look at this, and again, this was recommended in 2017. And I know emotions are running high, and we don't feel comfortable presenting this. But we have a fiduciary responsibility to take a look at our data. This wasn't something that was conjured up in the office right above there, my office, where we said, let's close a building. We hired an architecture firm, we hired the Pennsylvania Economy League, and their data right now, from what we can see, is irrefutable. We are down 1,100 plus students. And we have to take a look at, and I drive around, I live in this community, I see the townhomes going up, right at Moyer Farm in Dublin, they've broken ground there, construction's rocking and rolling. And it doesn't always make sense to me when I say, well, we should be getting an inflow of families and students. But what we have right now, the information that we're equipped with is, it's 0.3 per household. So my simple math is, if 10 new homes, whether it's townhouse, single home, 10 homes, we have 3 students, 3 children, according to this data. So, again, I want you to hear from me. We are not looking to furlough positions and hand people their walking papers. We're looking at the space that we have, and we're projecting out what we can do to be financially solvent. And I've heard in my travels that South needs, and I've seen it myself, it needs an auditorium. Mr. Wers, I think you're the longest serving board member. I think it's 12, 15, probably
More than
20
50
million
now, but that was a few years ago.
to do that. So this is a proposal that we could talk about, but you have my word, as long as I'm the superintendent of the school district, we are not looking to furlough folks, close a building and furlough folks by seniority. We're not looking to do that. But we do have to take a look at the brutal facts here and talk about it, and it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to talk about. It may be the will and desire of the board to say, we're not going to do this. I don't know. I can't speak for our elected officials. But I know that we have a responsibility to take a look at the facts here, and every 3 to 5 years, a school district should be looking internally at doing a feasibility study of their structures. They should be doing enrollment studies and looking at internally about what changes need to be made. Sometimes school districts do a reconfiguration. Okay, the elementary schools are getting a little bit packed. Maybe, and if the schools has a high school, grades 10 through 12, maybe we move 9th grade to the high school. Schools do this all of the time. You hear about the Philadelphia School District right now. There is a lot of scuttlebutt there with closing buildings. Why are they doing this? Because we have a challenge with revenue right now and school funding. And there's rising costs of special education. I wrote a letter to the South community today. Special education, rising charter school costs, health insurance costs, and inflation. It's going up, and we have rising expenditures, and our revenue is not keeping pace. And we have to look internally and at least bring it to bear to our community, our school board, to say, here is a proposal. Thank you.
I just want to add a few comments. So you addressed a lot of them, but as a board, we obviously care a lot about the schools. I love South too. I've been there quite a few times over the years. We're not doing this solely without reason. or trying to do this. So I think you touched on it. We've seen a spiraling costs over the last few years. And if you come down to our finance meetings, you can see that the increase in cyber charter and healthcare and all these things are blowing up our budget. We're also, as far as other issues that we have, is we have that declining enrollment. So one of the things the board tasked was to ask the administration to project out 3 years to see how we would do. Is this year we're going to lose money as a district. We can make it up with fund balances. But when we projected out maximum tax increases for 3 years, we would still be losing money. And that's not good for the future of the district. So we have to do something in order to bring our costs in line because of all these things coming together at once. And it's not something we enjoy doing, but I think as trying to make sure we set the school up for the future correctly, we need to do something now or we're going to really pay for it later. And that's not something I would want to go down that road at all. So I do thank you for your support of the school. I know how hard these type of things are, but we as a board have to look out for the whole future of the district too. So, thanks.
I'll echo that. Thank you, Dr. Palmer. You're yet again put in a pretty difficult situation to send hard news out to the district, mostly resulting of the financial situation that us and pretty much every public school in the county is facing. None of this feels good. To me, I don't think things like increasing class size is good for our students. I know it's hard on our staff who have already put in more than their fair share of time and their own money to support our classrooms, and we're asking for even more. You guys got us through COVID. You help raise our kids. All of us have kids in the district and know how impactful the teachers are on our students' lives. We don't like this, but I do have actual questions around this too. Because public education is at a precipice right now of, what direction is it going to be going? And we're, as Mr. Wertz mentioned, there's quite a few fronts that aren't working in our favor right now. However, when we talk about the capacity that we were at before and the class sizes, getting it to the sizes they currently are was intentional, and we saw how that helped the education of our staff. So knowing that we're going to be pushing this a little more to the limit to hopefully get us through some lean years, when we're through that, the goal would be to get back, because the smaller the class size, the better it is for everyone. If that was the case, would we have the ability with just the 2 schools to start decreasing class sizes again, like to make them more manageable?
So let me be clear. I'm not talking about going through and just taking a bunch of kids, putting them there and increasing class size.
Right.
That is not what we're talking about.
No, but I understand that. But I mean, it's not even just this, we're, as a district in general, so there's, obviously us discussing the middle schools, but we're challenging staffing needs, because we need to find money everywhere we can. And so part of that is going to be that all of the classes, elementary school and everything, that staff is going to have a little bit more in their hands.
Can you go back to the slide with it shows the total number of students in schools?
But my question is I understand the need to do that with the financial situation that we're in. Can I finish?
Yeah, I didn't
Okay.
know.
So I understand the need to do that with the financial situation we're in. My hope is, though, once we level this out, and if enrollment does continue to just maintain and even go down, would we have the ability to keep moving things around to then reduce class sizes? To get the education aspect moving back up again.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. you're saying, do these schools have the capacity to have
Yeah.
their current class sizes? I think that's something we have to look very closely at what those would look like. I can go through and give some analysis of what they are. Do I think 30 kids per class like it was in 2018-19? No, I certainly don't,
Yeah.
and I don't know why that was being done at the time. Do I think 18 or 20 is an appropriate number? I don't. There's no evidence showing an efficacy of a class size dropping to 18 or 20 like that, depending upon, unless you have kids that's struggling, something like that. So I don't think that is a consideration. We'll continue to look at these very closely, what class sizes look like, and I would be committed that we would not return to something like it looked like in 2018 or 19. I see no reason to do that.
What were the class sizes then, when it was at max capacity? That was,
I can pull those.
or the
for you.
max we've had in the last, kind of like to know what we were dealing with. 'Cause if you look at combining the schools, the total attendance would appear to be
Yeah.
near the,
I'll certainly provide that for you. Yep.
Dr. Palmer, I did want to thank you just for this initial presentation, because that's how I'm seeing it, as I know that we asked for ways that we could save, but to me, this is just very much of an initial presentation. I appreciate the community, the teachers, the students coming out, as your voice really is invaluable. There's no decisions that have been made. With the utilization, I know that with the rezoning, they came back with a number, but I know Dr. Palmer, you and the administration went out to actually see, because one thing is for them to show us the numbers, another thing is for you guys to go out into the classrooms and
Yeah.
see
Part
what
of that-
it's going to look like.
Part of that analysis was to look at the actual facility, so I think having ICS come back help us kind of look a little more closely at how those spaces are being used. Not every school has class sizes that are identical, so as I said, we looked at, Grass and Guth. Some of them has very, very small classrooms, closer to that 600 square foot than 1,000 square feet, or 1,100 square feet you might have in Guth. So we'll go back and take a look at North, Central, and South, and take a look at the individual class sizes.
Right, I think that's really important to look at what their class sizes are now, and just the cost of what if we were to have two, what would they look like? I know it's different depending on math and other things, but also what is the cost of more buses? What does that look like? I think we really need to get into the nitty-gritty of, I know someone mentioned like lunch, like if there's 3 sections of lunch, would there then be 4? Like, I feel like, and I think this is why we're starting now, is to have those conversations, to really see how this is going to affect not just the community, but our students, their education, the class size, the lunch, like that's all really important, and the cost of it, like someone, I think you mentioned, how much would the North Kitchen need upgrade? So there is a lot still to figure out, and I just want the community and the people here to know that we do have a lot of questions, and any questions that you have, like, let us know. Like, this is really a conversation that we're having. It's nothing that this is set. We value our teachers, and we value our community and what we have to say. We're up here as 9 people, but we're here for you guys to hear and how we can do what's best for our district. That's really our goal, is to do what is best for all of our students, and to really take the time to look at all these and get all these answers to these questions. So, but with that said, I know this is the initial one, and I appreciate all the work that's already come to fruition in this.
Yeah, and listen, if we were in a situation where we're doing an analysis and we think this is an impossibility, we'd say that to you, like, it's not going to work. I believe it is there, and I went back with Breslin when we were doing this. I talked with ICS. They said, yes, the capacity is there. I think as Dr. Barrios had pointed out, we're going to lose another 300 to 400 kids at the high school. We've come down significantly. We have space there. I think the district, we have to really think about how we're utilizing the space that we're using. We have to be good stewards of the district's resources, funds, for its future.
Yeah, I just thank you for doing this and going through this. And it's nice to see that the community cares and is coming out and speaking up and interacting on the subject. I think it would be helpful, one of the first things I wrote down was increase in class sizes. And I think it would be helpful, and maybe because I'm more of a visual person, to show, okay, I'm just throwing numbers out there. At North, we have currently 6 sections of math, right? And at South, we have 4 sections. And by adding X amount of students to each of the middle schools, we're going to need to add X number and show what those class sizes
Right.
would look like.
Right. And
And maybe we're all saying the same sort of thing, but I think just if we can map that out, I think that would be
Certainly
helpful,
can
and maybe that would give the community, more trust in what Dr. Barrios has said, and show that we still have a need for the staff. It's not like these kids are coming from out of South and not needing to be educated, and we still need the staff to provide the services to those students in what that would look like in between the 2 other schools. And I guess my next question would be, how wrong do these studies need to be for us to say, you know what, we closed it and now we need to go back and reopen? What would those numbers?
Well,
It's a lot, right?
if we can go back, sorry, to one of the first slides I shared with you,
I guess they're not all.
they're not.
So I guess that. Go ahead.
But we hadn't had a study done in a significant amount of time. So this is something that I'm going to come back to you, Dr. Barrios. We've had this discussion. We're going to need to do another enrollment study. If we're looking
Can you
at
slow it up for us, Dr. Palmer? Some of the people in the audience cannot hear you.
Is the mic on?
No, the mic's not on.
Mike's just
Just
for
live
the
feed.
live feed.
I'm still recovering from a cold. I'm trying not to breathe on that. Sorry. If you're looking at those studies, if they were to come in and say, we're seeing all this construction, that's one of the things that Pell said is, hey, if you have a lot of construction or you're seeing a lot of people move into your town, that's a sign that something might be going on. However, I think we're going to come back to you and say, we're going to need to do a study about every 5-6 years. We want to do another one, because if you recall, I said that first 5 years is the one that's really good, because those kids have actually been born as they're coming up.
Right.
So the later 5 years for elementary depends on kids that are projected to be born, looking at those birth rates. For middle school, we already do know those kids. They're living in our town. So it's a little more accurate for that 10-year. But we're going to come back to you. Because we're having those movements come in, we'll come back and do another study to look at what those are doing. Because how many people are moving in? If we're putting in over 55s, we're not going to get many.
Right.
So I'm sorry, you're going to do that before we would have to make decisions on this?
No, what I'm saying is we're going to come back again
In 5 years with another study.
to get another study done. These numbers are accurate for what we have, unless we see some drastic change occur.
Wait, well, when was the last study conducted?
This year.
It was this year? I'm sorry. It looks like
Last year.
2017.
If you look at the yellow one,
Yeah,
you see how it's 2016, 17?
yeah.
That was projected out. So that was the last one that was done.
No, there
In
was,
2017.
The next-
So we just did one.
yeah, that's on the
Oh,
next
okay.
slide. I wanted to
Which
combine
is on
the
them
next
so you
slide.
could see.
Yep,
You should kind of continue that graph with the curve,
Got it.
we will.
so it shows
Thank
a
you.
shows a better picture.
Okay.
I do have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. I really appreciate all of the historical data that's been shared, and I think it does show an interesting picture. I would ask to show the community the relation between how much capital would need to be put into North and Central to make, I know a new kitchen can be rather expensive, compared to how much capital would be saved closing South. And then also, adding in how much capital to secure a leasee. So, what kind of code improvements would need to be done. I know, it was suggested that maybe someone who leased south would take over the utilities and the maintenance, but to actually get someone into the building, are there things that would need to be done before then, and just kind of, weighing the ultimate projected savings versus how much upfront would the district need to spend to get us to that point.
Okay.
And then the other question I would have, which is more of a projection type question that maybe would come for the future, but looking at, we do have a high number of retirees living in Pennridge. Ultimately, those properties will be filled by someone else. Do we have new retirees moving into Pennridge? Or when I suspect that a lot of the staying comes from the favorable mortgage rates from 2020, and right now it doesn't make so much sense for a retiree to go buy another property. So if we see those rates drop, does that trend change as well?
Yeah, I think the district has a couple things. The rates are doing well. It has very favorable taxation. That is,
Speak up. Or
The
at least
district-
face them.
the district has favorable taxes, and I think it's a place that retirees would want to stay.
Are we seeing them moving in though, or just people staying? Is kind, and you don't need to answer it right now.
I think that's a question we can go back to the Pennsylvania Economy League.
Okay.
But when we asked about in-migration, that is trends of new families moving in, that's simply not being seen. Whereas if you're an inner ring suburb, like where I live in Abington, there was a huge influx and a huge increase in population, but it was people moving from cities with young families into those areas. And it was a higher taxed area, and a lot of retirees leave. So that's one of the differences. It's just not being seen in Pennridge.
Okay. Thank you.
So I do want to take a second to recognize that this is a difficult discussion for any of us to have. As a community, staff, admin, board. When I was in high school, South's Papa Yoder Field is where I attended every Pennridge football game. It's where I marched at my graduation. It's where my friends and I played more than a few games to pick up football. It's a place where I have lots of fond memories. It's also the place that my eldest son is excited and a little nervous to attend school next year. So I know that, like many of you here, this is a difficult discussion to hear and for any of us to be forced in this environment to have. But it is one that we have to have. I know that emotions are going to run high on this. I know that we all have strong feelings about what we want for the future of our community. And I trust that my fellow board members, I trust that the administration is going to approach this in a way that respects the community, respects the emotion, gives fair process and an opportunity for people to feel heard, and is not going to rush into any decision unless we all have the opportunity for fair process, feel heard, and to make sure that this is the decision that is best for the community. I want to thank everyone who chose to show up tonight to be a part of that conversation at this first step.
I just had a thought here, looking at comparing this transition to what we've just dealt with the rezoning. And I don't know if this is even a possibility, but maybe something to consider, right? We had the exemptions for the fourth graders going into fifth grade to stay at their current school through an exemption process. I'm just wondering, is it possible to have a pre-exemption process that if I'm in fifth grade going into sixth grade, and instead of going to South, if I meet certain requirements, could And if there's space at one of the other two middle schools, is there a process we could have where the parent could ask for, instead of having my kid transition from elementary school to middle school, and then from one middle school to a second middle school, why not just go right to what would become the new assigned middle school?
So I guess,
We'd have
then
to.
wouldn't that mean that it would be the incoming sixth graders
Yeah,
next year?
yeah.
But then that means a decision would have to be made now.
Exactly.
No,
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah, okay.
I
approve the
like
trans-
it, I like what
No.
you're thinking of, like, the
Yeah,
transition,
well-
that means it would have to
well,
be
no-
made.
You have.
yeah, I guess, right, it would be for the,
We can't do
okay,
that until we get better maps
Yeah,
with
yeah.
actual data
Yeah.
for where the lines are drawn, but yeah.
Scratch that,
I hear
sorry.
what you're saying.
Yeah, I guess it's,
I just look forward to seeing the
There's no
maps and
way.
how
Alright.
how the
Scratch
lines
No good way.
remove that off the,
I don't really have any questions at this point. I just
back up the
wanted to see
tape.
that data. All right.
Dave.
Asking any good questions.
dump it.
Thank you, Brett.
There are no.
Thank you, Dr. King.
Thank you, Brett.
Next, we have the elementary rezoning parent-student welcome activities with Mr. Johnson.
Next year, right, they're going to this right next year, and it'll be that. Come up with maps now. What if?
Right?
Wait, where are you all going? Are you saying? Can you be silent? Okay.
We were listening.
Thank you.
We got
I
you.
appreciate it.
Yep.
He's really good at speaking too.
You'll be able to hear that.
We'll stay for it.
Thank you. You'll say? I appreciate it.
We'll stay where you
I didn't know that was an option.
Okay.
What meeting is it? Policy?
No, we're
No,
still
still
on student services.
Oh.
Second.
One more. Don't
Just
get
for
ahead of
forward.
yourself.
At the elementary zone of student services.
I know, we have different approaches.
I like
All right, let's get the final hugs in. So for the elementary rezoning, which Dr. Palmer also did an excellent job presenting on that, we're going to just talk about some activities. Some of the activities aren't in person. They're just touch points that these schools want to make with their new students. So Dr. Palmer and I spoke to the elementary principals over I believe it was last week, about a welcome letter directly from the principal to the families via snail mail. So you'll get an actual letter on letterhead from these principals welcoming your son or daughter or your child to the new school. That should go out around the third week in May. It's an opportunity for the principals to introduce you to the highlights of their schools, so the letters will be personalized according to what that school brings to the table for your child as a new person entering their school. The open house on June 9th, you may have already heard about, but that will be an afternoon activity for families. It is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Palmer, a half day?
Yes.
For students. And so the second half of that day will be an open house. So if you save the date, mark your calendar for that event on June 9th, that'll be an opportunity for you and your child or children to be a part of that school community in person, live with the principal, teachers on campus, counselor on campus. So I think that's a great opportunity for you to bring your child to the school to meet the principal and to meet some of the teachers, and preferably the teachers that your child will have that following school year. Another touch point in June, don't ask me what this will look like, but I believe postcards will be coming from the schools at some point in early to mid-June. Again, another touch point where they can orient you to what school will be like in their fabulous school. And the principals are excited about the new students and welcoming you and your families, so that way you feel more comfortable about the change. And change is very, very challenging, as Dr. Palmer just walked through consolidating middle schools. And I think to the credit of the South teachers that came out, Clearly, you're an incredible faculty that care about your students and care about your school, which is what we expect. Virtual story time is another touch point that will be read by the principals. You'll receive a link. And how many of you are familiar with the tiny seed? Of course, Dr. Bloom. I am not, so I'm not going to go into the tiny seed. But if you want to see Dr. Bloom tonight, tomorrow, she can talk to you about the tiny seed. Dave Thomas is going to help create a hype video featuring all the schools. So kind of like the Sixers, everybody's hype about them right now. They won Game 7 against the Celtics. So envision something like that. Tyrese Maxey or Joel Embiid won't be there, but you'll see the principals and maybe some teachers. That's another coming attraction for August. The final activity, Family Welcome Day, which is a tradition here at Pennridge. Another save the date, August 27th, 2026 is the date selected for that event. Any questions from the board?
So for the open house, and I've had to, will there be families already in those schools invited also as just maybe a way to connect the new families with families
Yeah.
already in the school so that they'll have summer to kind of like make some friends? Is that part of the plan also?
Yes, and I think with the HSAs as well, I think they'll have some involvement in that. But I think that's a great recommendation to try to hold some people to attend this event as well, so some of the new families can meet some of the existing families. So, thank you.
Mr. Johnson?
Maybe we can find people. Go ahead, Dr.
No, I was just going to add to that. We did send a save the date already out to rezoned families, incoming kindergarten families that we are currently aware of, and new move-ins that we're currently aware of. During that, we did not include typical families who had already been in there. So if that is something we'd like to do, we'll just make a note and make sure that we can put it out there. It's not an issue.
It's possible, you know, like if you guys think it, but it just.
Yeah, I totally understand what the.
Before school starts.
Absolutely. And the time that we currently have for the open house that day is 2:30 to 3:30. So there is a specific time that was set as well for the principals. So that way there's some opportunity for them to finish up what they were doing from building professional development. And then we have the hour set aside. But we can make that note, Mr. Johnson, and, put out some type of communication possibly just through Mr. Thomas as well. And I hope this is on.
Any other comments or questions?
I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts on this.
Okay.
I think that, I don't know, the open house on the last day of school, like, I guess we're rushing this, and that is, I just think that that's rush, to have the open house on, a lot of things going on the last day of school, right? It's a half day, kids are having parties, celebrating. Is there a way that we can engage the PTOs at each of the 7 elementary schools, and maybe we have meet the PTO, or it's getting the members of each of the PTOs together. Maybe it's at the high school in the lobby from 6:30 to 7:30, where the parents that are already involved in the PTOs can come together, meet each other, know like, okay, I was on this PTO and now I'm being reassigned, I want to be involved, and get them involved with planning some more meetups throughout the summer. Play dates at the playgrounds. Maybe there's some families that would be willing to say, hey, I'm going to have a play date and introduce your child to some of my, our friends in this school. Things like that. And maybe we can rely on the PTOs to help with that, but I think we just need to make a better connection between those.
Yeah, I can speak to that.
We're going to be at the open house?
Dr. Bloom can, and then I will.
Yep, I can speak to that. So first of all, I agree. I recognize that the last day of school is challenging. The reason we did that is it is the only day that we have available that the heartbeat of the school, the teachers, are actually there that day. So we didn't want to simply just invite parents in over the summer when the halls were empty and it feels a little colder. The warmth of the school comes from having everyone fully fully on campus, and the only day available was June 9th. So I honor what you're saying. I agree. We just wanted to give something to have that 2:30 to 3:30. We've also already had one, if not two. The second meeting is coming, I believe. We've connected all of the HSA presidents together across all 7 elementary schools. They have had one meeting where we discussed the June 9th open house, the postcards, and the tiny seed. We have another meeting coming up with them, and then we are kind of letting them then decide for each of the schools, what will that look like? I know there's already been discussions about popsicles on the playground, about meeting the principals. So those conversations are in progress. And then once we kind of had the opportunity to bring them together, we'll give them then that power back to say, what do you want to do for each individual school? So I just want to make sure you know that I agree and that we have definitely, put that into practice. Go ahead, Ms. Sharino.
So we have looked into like the different home schools and PTOs and just to see what we can do as United, but every school is unique. So with that said, I know some schools, like if they have a certain Facebook page, an email will be sent out. Welcome
Correct.
to this elementary school. Here's a Facebook page. Here's when the next PTO. I know some PTOs are actually before the end of the school year inviting those families to come
right.
in. So reaching out, whether, there's just so many different ideas, but we all are working together to see what we can do that's similar and what we can do that's different to every school. I know some of them have like an end of the year celebration for the whole school, and those families are invited to the point so that the kids have different touches to that school.
Good.
So these are more like the district-wide activities, and then the individual schools will have their own additional.
That's exactly right. So we wanted to try, this actually was born out of the full day kindergarten family engagement committee because we were working through that, and it just dovetailed so beautifully that we thought, why not put together a few things that we can do from the district lens to be able to support the families who are affected by rezoning, which is how we came up with the first couple of bullets on here, the welcome letter, open house, postcards, story time, and actually all the bullets up here. And the hype video that we're working on. And then from there, this is what we can do from a district lens. And then each of the HSAs will then take the reins and continue to build what makes each HSA special and each school special, because there's pride in keeping that identity as well. And we want to be able to invite people in to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Johnson, I did not mean to steal your thunder, though. I will return it to you.
I love it. Anything further? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm
Mr.
not-
Johnson. I don't believe we have any more public comment.
I just have to wait.
All right, then with that, our next Student Services Committee meeting is scheduled for Monday, June 2nd. Next up is
Sure.
curriculum.
Could be curriculum.
There you go.
Is there any public comment out there for curriculum?
No, there's no public comment sign-up sheet even out there. Oh, maybe they submitted it through ChatGPT.
Probably wrong then.
Too many M dashes.
Too many M dashes.
We're gonna-
All right. So there is no public comment here before our curriculum meeting, in which case we are going immediately to a discussion of curriculum maps with Dr. Bloom with a STEM plus M update. Ms. Christine Tambourine.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome this evening. May the 4th be with you all. I know, it's a good one, right? So this evening, we are going to go through just a few things for curriculum. There are no actionable items this evening for the board, just so you can be aware from the upcoming meeting of the full board on May 11th. I will go over a little bit of information from curriculum maps. Ms. Tamburino will then join me for STEM plus M, and just for the board's awareness, obsolete books will be posted this month. So as part of the curriculum review cycle each year, we have talked about this quite often throughout the year. The curriculum review cycle will begin for the 26-27 school year, where each of our core and non-core areas will be touched to be able to have their curriculum reviewed, revised, and then continue to be posted online for transparency. I just wanted to be able to discuss with the board and the community this evening that currently we contract with Atlas to hold all of our curriculum maps. And the cost of that service is a little over $22,000 a year. After doing the research around it, my department can recreate these maps and we won't lose any of the efficacy or transparency of the maps, and will be able to keep them both in-house and community-facing free of charge. So my thought, even though it will be a lot of work for our department, it is the fiscally responsible choice to make. There are plenty of examples out there of other districts who post their curriculum maps and their scope and sequences online for the community in PDF form and Google Forms, and we are able to recreate that. So that is our plan moving forward, is to reduce the annual cost of $22,000 per year and to take this work in-house. I apologize ahead of time if you can't see this because it is very small, but I just want to make sure that you know what is up here. This is our currently housed curriculum maps in Atlas, and it has features such as our standards, the big ideas that we hope to convey to our students, the content, what are the essential questions, the skills, and all of the summative maps. Okay, and this is what we would house inside for us, and I'll be able to show you the difference between this and a community-facing map on the next slide. This is the community-facing map. It is the exact same map as I just showed you on the slide before. I'll go back so you can see it. Internal, external. The only difference is the yellow arrow, which points to the actual assessments that we link in Atlas, which will now keep for us internally. We would obviously not link those assessments for the community facing, because then any child could go on, print the test, do it ahead of time, and not need to come and take it in school. So we recognize that those are the major differences between internal and external facing right now. And what we would like to do is to make sure that all of the internal documents and external documents on Atlas, we are currently in the process of taking them all to an internal Google Drive. My department, each of the 4 supervisors, has been working on this. We will recover it again at our coordinator meeting this week. We will get all of that information, and then we will update each curriculum map as we go through the curriculum review cycle. So I'll explain what that looks like to the community. We will keep all of the Atlas internal maps and external maps posted on the website as you would typically see them for the community. We will keep ours internally as we would typically see them for us. So all of the maps, for example, in science that are currently on Atlas, we'll download, we'll put into PDFs, we'll get them reposted. As we go through the curriculum review cycle and we update the map, we will update it to the new form, which I've connected here at the bottom so you can see it. So instead of the Atlas map moving forward, this will be the draft that you will then see for the maps that will be posted. It will have the exact same information, the pacing guide, the materials, the big ideas, the standards, the essential questions, the skills, the vocabulary, everything that you would typically see. This is just an example. It's blank right now. And this map will go up as we go through the curriculum review cycle. If your core or encore area is not going to be touched until 2029, your map would stay the same as it was from Atlas. It just won't be in Atlas. We will have downloaded it, we will post it, and then we will go back to it when we are able to connect to that area. And then what we did here is we just put in a very brief example of what a grade 1 could look like. This is an example template. So you'll see where we have the chapters, the descriptions, what the grading criteria is, where we would be completing the different areas or units in your scope and sequence guide, an example of the big ideas, essential questions, skills, and so on and so forth. So overall, the heavy lift comes from my department working to get all of these things downloaded, exported, organized, and then if your content area has not been touched yet, we will repost it exactly as it remains. And then as we touch it through the curriculum review cycle, it will shift to those documents instead of Atlas. Does anyone have any questions on that piece?
No, I just want to applaud you for looking for a new way of doing something and save the district money. And it's,
Thank you. I appreciate
we
that.
went to add Atlas, and everybody thought it was a good idea, but it's ingenious to take a look at it and say, hey, we can do it ourselves.
Yes.
That adds up. That's over 10 years, it's almost $250,000, so that's a lot of money.
It is, I agree. Okay, from that then, we will move on to our STEM plus M implementation timeline. I'll introduce Ms. Tamburino in a moment, but I just want to thank the board again for moving forward with this initiative. The excitement that our teachers had when they had the chance to go out and see STEM plus M in action. They drove 8 hours down to Virginia. I know. And they came back and they were so excited. They came back from Virginia and it was not as nice, but no, it's just going to be such an amazing, amazing opportunity for our Pennridge students. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Tamburino.
And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight. It is very exciting, as Dr. Blue mentioned, and I feel very fortunate to be a part of this. So just to give everyone a little bit of a touch point on where we are, I feel like a lot has happened, but like not a lot of time has passed. So it's great to be able to talk about it. So throughout April and kind of shifting into May, we are looking at individual floor plan layouts and seeking approval after coordinating with both our facilities department and our partners at STEM plus M. So that those are well underway. I imagine that in the next 2 weeks, we will see all of the floor layout approvals come through. We are working with our team to discuss the on-site preparations that would be needed. We talked a little bit about that in the presentations. Those remain very limited in terms of the outfitting that we would have to do on site to prepare for the STEM plus M installation. We are going to work through the STEM plus M lab installation timeline. So I'll be able to share more of that with you as those approvals come through and we get an idea of when we will be getting started and how long that will take. We anticipate for the outfitting of the labs and the installation to happen over the course of June through July. And we are looking to be the site for on-site training with our STEM plus M partners and all of our teachers here, both in Pennridge and some of the communities that are surrounding us, which I think only includes one other local district. Just taking a brief moment to talk a little bit about the STEM plus M curriculum overview. With the MOU that was passed at the April board meeting, we are now gaining access to the curriculum and we'll be sharing that with our teachers so we can get an advanced look at kind of the units and how to prepare our teachers for that curriculum. This is their public curriculum that is available and accessible to everyone here, and we can kind of take a look at both the units of study, the pathway titles, their scope and sequence, as well as some of the content overview. So I do encourage you to take a look. It's really exciting. And I know that our team members who were able to kind of get a little sneak peek in the Virginia classroom were extremely impressed with what the students were doing, the amount of facilitating that the teacher was doing instead of kind of that, one-on-one instruction. It was very much student-driven learning. And I know we're just so excited to get started here at Pennridge. I am going to find my way back. Thank you, Jen. Tips and tricks. So again, we are going to be hosting the summer professional development with all of our grade 7 STEM teachers, as well as some of our implementation team members. So we're really hoping to have a very cohesive group here to be able to support our teachers. And after working with our STEM plus M partners, they do a tremendous amount of support through the onboarding process and will actually be on site to facilitate in-person kind of training and onboarding with our teachers as we move into the year. So we're very much looking forward to that. And just another highlight, we did have 2 of our team members, our instructional coach, Miss Erin Reichert, and our amazing STEM teacher, Stephanie Schultz, who's here with us tonight. Make the trek down to Virginia, but from everything that we've been able to speak about, it was just a really positive and wonderful experience. So here we have a nice little snapshot of some of the STEM plus M partners and our team members. they were able to observe students who were completing 4 different rotational units, which I think is really speaks very highly to the level of, I want to say, advanced curriculum that this program has, to have students working kind of independently at their stations with partners. And I'm really excited to be able to start to share some of those highlights as we get into it with our students next year. Really looking forward to those opportunities for our students. They were able to make connections with experienced STEM+M teachers, as well as teachers who will be teaching it for the first time. So it was kind of a mixed group of who was in attendance at this visit. And one of the things that we've kind of been talking about are those tips and tricks, those best practices, both to help with kind of the organization of the student stations, which are maintained entirely by our students. So it really does provide a very autonomous, independent level of learning that we're really looking forward to implementing here. And I know that both Ms. Scholes and Ms. Reichert came back very enthusiastic to share with us what they learned and what they saw. And we are just really excited to get underway. So thank you so much for your support of this program. We are really excited to be a part of it. So thank you.
It's awesome. Neat.
Are there any questions from the board?
Well, can you explain how we ended up with this
Sure.
opportunity? Like,
Absolutely.
do credit where
So
credit is due?
long ago, and
Quite a brief step.
yeah, Mr. Rosar's finally going to get done under like 20 minutes. So this actually started quite a long time ago. It started before I was even a part of the district. Dr. Barrios had the opportunity to begin discussions around the 250th anniversary of our country, and we had put together all kinds of plans and things that were going to come to fruition, and observations, and people were going to come here, and we were going to have presentations, and some of it fell a little flat. And that wasn't on the fault of our district at all. It sort of just didn't come to fruition all the way that it was supposed to be. And knowing Dr. Barrios, he didn't just kind of let it lie there. He kind of did a little research to say, look, we tried to bring something really special to our kids. It didn't come together. What else is out there? And he was able to connect with another local superintendent who was able to say, look, this is another opportunity because STEM+M is funded fully through the Navy. So through this opportunity and really the tenacity that Dr. Barrios showed in not letting it just lie still, we were able to have them come and do a presentation for us. And we just fell in love with what their curriculum has to offer and the robustness, how we think it will not only extend the 7th grade program, but really get students excited and even more prepared for the 8th grade program, which was a big portion of this. So at the end of the day, we asked the board if they would approve this partnership between us and STEM+M for roughly $1.5 million worth of material that will be given to Pennridge. Like anyone, all of us were a little nervous of like, nothing's really free, right? What does that mean? But quite honestly, having been through every single one of the meetings, this really is an opportunity to simply be able to increase our students, staff, and school districts' footprint in the STEM and manufacturing area to be able to give back to our community, especially when it looks at some of the manufacturing opportunities within Pennridge. Of course. Any other questions?
Reminder that didn't cost the district.
It did not cost us any money. In conclusion, yes, it was completely $1.5 million was donated. That is accurate.
Which is quite amazing.
Quite
Doesn't
amazing.
happen.
No.
And one of the reasons the birthday celebration fell through with the Navy and Marine Corps is because there's a federal government shutdown last fall, so I'd like to.
No one's fault up
Wasn't your fault.
down there. It wasn't Dr. Barrios' fault. I'd like to go on record by
Get
stating
blamed for
that.
everything else, but.
That's what happened.
That concludes our curriculum presentation for the evening. Thank you so much, and like I said, may the 4th be with you all.
Thank you.
And then are there any questions about obsolete books?
They're
What
on.
are they?
I don't think we have.
Are there any?
They're gonna be.
Yes, they're.
Oh, they're attached on
Oh, they
a
are.
separate case. So.
Wasn't on
Let me know if you need me to go back up. and I will. Okay.
the.
If there are no questions, the next curriculum committee meeting is scheduled for June 2nd. And we will go on to policy.
Are we okay if we take just a 5-minute break?
Absolutely. We're going to take,
5 minutes.
yeah, we'll take just a short break before the policy committee and be back. All right, well, welcome back. We'll start the policy committee now. There is no public comment, so we'll move right along to looking at the first reading for policy 815.2, use of generative artificial intelligence in education. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you very much. This is a robust policy. The discussion will center on your pre-reading of the policy, as well as some choice that we have within the policy. So I think the best approach to engage in this process is to talk through some of what you've read, and then we can talk about the choice that you have. And by choice, I mean there's some options that we have for roles, identification within the policy, which make a little bit more sense as we go through it. Obviously, generative AI is a moving target for us, for many school districts in the world. So we'll do the best that we can. What we'll be able to do, we're going to develop an administrative regulation around the policy, and that's what we can reshape 6 months annually as targets move. We'll be able to review that on a more persistent and consistent basis, as opposed to the policy, which has to go through a first reading, second reading, and then board approval. So I want to first bring your attention to the fact that under the authority section, this policy references other policies that are connected to it. And that was really intentional by design in our work with an attorney, the school district solicitor, in determining what other policies match this. So I want to give credit to our technology department for helping develop this piece of it, as well as Ms. Taylor, who did an initial review of this policy. So as we look through the policy, is there anything that stands out to the board that you want to bring forward for discussion? I remember this is our first reading. However, this policy, as it's currently constructed, is different from the original PSBA version. There's a lot more teeth to this policy compared to what we looked at a couple of months ago.
I did have just some questions.
Sure.
And I know Nina did actually explain this to me, because I thought the title of it was confusing, but this is the student generative AI policy, right?
Yes.
And also, I wanted to know, I know that on page 5 it mentions something at the end about, do the students have the ability to download any type of AI on the computer, or is that will be blocked?
It is blocked.
I believe it already is blocked.
So they can't, okay. And when it asks for parent approval, is that looking to come out in the beginning of the year when everyone has to say, can you give my child Tylenol? Is that when that's going to be coming out, or is it's going to be coming out separately somewhere else that the parents have to opt in?
Yeah, the recommendation would be that we treat this similar to a survey, where if you want to opt out. However, what the attorney recommended is that we make it a part of our acceptable use form that goes out at the beginning of every year. So it's an annual process to, you don't want your children to participate in generative AI or use AI tools. The parent has the ability to opt their child out of that and not participate.
But where will that be housed? Where you put, if you want to pay for insurance of your computer, is that where it will be?
So there's a form that goes out at the end of every summer. So a parent will be able to, at least that was the recommendation, unless the board has a desire for some different process.
Yeah,
Through a power school.
Yes, through Power School.
So
Okay,
if-
so that's
Yep,
what
the
I'm saying.
beginning of the
That's
year.
where all that stuff, that's where it will be housed.
Yes. Yep.
Is that part of the AR or part of the policy?
It could be both. So in here, if you look at, I think you're referencing probably page 7.
Yep, page 7.
Yeah.
Second paragraph,
Okay.
district shall obtain informed consent.
So then that's where you're looking at the consent will be there in Power School saying that.
Right. And that's something that we'll need to add.
And it would be like an all or nothing
Yes.
sort of thing. And I'm sorry, I can't get in my email, but thank you for forwarding my questions, but he did say that is something they're able to do Like
Yes.
group permissions, et cetera, so it won't be up to the teacher to be like taking the laptop away and saying, don't use it. They just
No.
wouldn't even have access
It's-
to it on their laptop.
Yeah, so,
the
so
question?
with the,
How we'd control that, like how would we ensure that if a parent opted their student out, that they
Right.
weren't getting AI on their laptop?
so I confirmed with Mr. Lazoche in IT that they can individually go in and disable Copilot. You know, currently the student laptops come standard with Copilot. So that was your question, was, you know, can we disable this? And yes, on an individual basis, but also if we hit a point where, you know, certain programs are appropriate for certain age groups, he said that they could also manage that as well.
So like for digital literacy, the class, let's say someone opts out, doesn't want, but the teacher's teaching something, safety, how to use it. It is a tool, right? There's great value to it. Will those children not be able to be a part? Is this going to be explained to the parents to really understand what it means? Because if it's educating on AI, the positives, does that mean they're not going to be included in that lesson? If it's not just for digital literacy, because that's really what, but let's say in other classes, will that be explained? And also for elementary, a parent may read, depending on how that's worded, right? I think they may be like, well, I don't want my kid to be on AI, but they may not understand there's more to it. There's the it's different. AI looks different for elementary, middle, and high school. So I think it's important for us to be able to educate parents, not just have a snapshot in Power School. Okay, you're either going to take it or not, because people are going to not understand it.
I think there's a show, right? If Carolyn says, yes, I'm opting my kid into the use of AI, and Tom is saying no, what does that mean? What am I opting in
Right.
to, or what am I opting out from?
And what are those limits? Are we just talking about when I'm doing homework, right, I can't use it? Or, again, going back to the digital literacy, is it educated? 'Cause
So I think it's important to first understand that this policy specifically is directed towards district laptops. So elementary school children are not issued
they have
laptops.
iPads. Well, they have laptops in
Starting
third grade.
third or fourth grade, right?
My third grader. Does it bring it home?
That they bring home?
They don't bring it
Yeah,
home, but they
so-
work on it at school.
still have
They're
access
working
to it.
So, you know, I think, you know, understanding that it's school provided. So, you know, as far as how a student would use AI at home, I agree. I don't think there's a way for us to, you know, regulate that. And that's where, you know, the academic integrity comes in and addressing that piece of it. And then, you know, one of the suggestions that Ernest and I had spoken about in looking at this policy was, is there an opportunity for us to have a community education night, kind of like what's been done with the cell phone, you know, kind of tagging on to that theme where we can start working with families of understanding valuable use of AI and ethical use of AI versus what's not, and how we can get community engagement to help manage that part.
I mean, that make a great point. I mean, I was thinking digital literacy, that's sixth grade. Will there be some type of education when the kids are given laptops in third grade? I mean, obviously they'll look different, but I think it makes sense if we're doing a policy, are we providing also some type of education, not just to the community, but also to our students, because they're given this, you know, laptop. And again, to our point is, then, when you're asking the question to the parents, do you consent or not? I'm not even sure, what am I consenting, what am I not consenting? So I don't know, do we look at that here? I don't know how that's worded.
I think that could be handled in the AR.
Is that what it is? Okay.
And I think to your point, and I think, Brian, you were part of the discussion as well, I think it's important to educate parents to exactly what they're looking at and what they're saying either yes or no to. And again, more of the I'm opting out of this as opposed to opting into it. But I think we could also develop some sort of fact sheet within the body of an administrative regulation that goes out prior to the information through Power School. That way, again, it gives parents a little bit more information about what this actually looks like.
Yeah, I think it's great. The more we can communicate to parents and educate, starting with them, I think, I mean, I would be one of those parents, you know, I don't really use AI, so I would be one of those parents that would want to know, okay, what is it that, and you have different level kids, right? So it's like, it's going to look different for elementary and middle and high school.
I was going to say,
So to that point, for parents that just aren't aware of what the difference is, you may have to just differentiate to them that this is not, like, they can still do a Google search, they can still do their work, they can still do research. They can't have AI just created from nothingness. You still have to go grab the data, you have to know what to ask, then it's up to you to organize the data. And that's when ChatGPT or whatever AI we're going to use, Copilot, that's when you could take this lump of information that the student creates and says, help me polish this, help me make this grammatically correct. So it's still their work. It's just an AI helping them organize it in a proper fashion. So opting them out of that means they have to do all of the work manually, where they have to come up with it, they got to do the research, then compile it themselves. So that's I think that's, you're going to have to spell that out for parents in the form where they're opting in and out.
And in the policy, it also says that teachers are allowed to use AI to see if what the child is giving in
There are
is
tools.
produced by AI.
There are tools that
Zero,
AI
ChatGPT
detectors,
zero,
yeah, GPT
But
zero.
not be the sole determining factor.
Yep.
And there was
Right, I
language
did
in
see
there
that
about
too.
that.
Mm-hmm. Just, we have significant professional development work we need to do internally because, I think there's a lot of questions to be asked. I don't think we have an idea of what best practice is to use in the classroom. We don't understand what those implications are. So I think the answers to those questions will really depend upon what we are thinking from the curriculum perspective, from student services perspective. We have a lot of work to do. So I think the policy itself is clear and sensible. It's all that other work that has to be done to answer those questions.
And to add to the conversation about consent, you also have to look at, for the purposes of this policy, consent for district-approved AI tools, not just any AI tool. Really, for us, it's really about Copilot, which is embedded on the laptops.
So I feel like along the lines of what you were just talking about, Dr. Palmer, like, if the idea is that we're kind of creating these like groups of like, if you're in elementary school, this is what your laptop will be able to do. If you're here, we will be defining then, like, this is what AI would be allowed
Yes.
to be used for. So I agree, like, I feel like once we have that, then that's almost like what we would give the parents, like,
Yes.
your elementary school, this is what the laptops are limited to do.
Yes.
Your middle school, this is what they're limited to do.
And I think the policy gives us that direction
Right.
and the ability to do that.
Yeah. Like, the intention is never like Wild West, like your kids
Yeah.
can have AI and do whatever they want
Yep.
with it.
No, I think that's kind of the goal here is, we acknowledge that this is the Wild West. It's a lot like, I think a lot of us remember when Google was coming on, and all the things that schools had to consider with that use. And so understanding that the nature of this technology, we're always going to be behind whatever is happening, but starting somewhere with a sensible framework that kind of allows us to really evaluate how we use AI within the district. And, I think I've made the recommendation that we keep this policy on a regular review cycle, at least for the first
Great
couple of
idea.
years. And even beyond that, really leaning on a really strong AR that can be updated more quickly as the technology continues advancing. So I think that's kind of the goal. But yeah, there's a lot of
And I think-
I'd like-
questions for
yeah.
sure the deeper you dig.
But that's a good plan, I like that plan.
So, yeah, on the consent question, I think that was kind of the goal, was to start there, I think with child protection laws and online access and all that. It makes sense to add it into the acceptable use policy.
And there's also language on page 7 where it talks about making it voluntary, the use of district AI tools. So it's up to the parent, really it's up to the parent to determine what that should look like. So there was some language embedded in this policy from the attorney that That was her recommendation, obviously something we can remove, but I think it's important.
We have exhibit A, B, and C.
What's that?
Do we have exhibits A, B, and C?
Where do you see that?
I don't know, I know in here it talks about exhibit B and exhibit C. But I don't see that attached to this policy. You're gonna ask me, where did I just see that? And now,
It's on page 7.
yeah, page 7, I know it is on.
I see that, yeah. Was
feel
that
like it talks in
from,
the concept.
it may be referencing the AR, Exhibit B of the Student Generative AI Procedures. Because there was a table in that draft. Is that what that's from, right? Yeah.
So Exhibit B, you're saying is the AR?
Yeah, so there was, it's nothing, it was a suggested draft, so nothing that's specifically attached to this policy for our purposes, but there was kind of an example of like a table that could be in the AR that kind of talks about the different levels of use and levels of consequences, things like that. So I think that's what that's referring to.
Students may follow. The procedure now, let's see. I guess that's the AR.
I did have a
None of the consequences for violating this, is that in AR, so it's uniform?
Tom, what page are you on there?
Page 9, the last talks about consequences.
Let me go there.
And to make sure that it's treated fairly, is that going to be in an AR? So we can see that it's being distributed.
Uniformly
Yeah,
applied,
yeah,
yes.
thank you. It's a much better way of putting it.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
Will it be in policy too, though? Consequences?
I don't, unless you want it there. I think it was really gonna be put in the AR. Again, because it can be, as things change with AI, we can change, right, we can make shifts. So I think it's better, as opposed to going into a policy and then we're stuck with it through 2 readings and then board approval, to really make that a part of the
Right, the policy is just,
regulation. Guide it,
the
guide it.
policy is just stating that there are consequences.
Yes.
Up to and including
Yep.
suspension or expulsion. Then the actual disciplinary action would be defined in an AR. So it's uniformly applied. It's late.
I know there was the question, I'm trying to find the section now, but the ownership of work generated
The
by like Copilot.
That's page 7.
7, yeah.
I was looking for it also.
Did we,
We didn't make a determination on the direction.
okay.
So with this, like, I understand the beginning where, like, students don't, there isn't a right to privacy if they're using our tools. Like, if they're doing something and we see it, but the last 2 bullets is another one, I just sort of get turned around. Every time I read it a little bit differently.
Page 7?
Yeah, page 7, so the last 2 bullets in the first set of bullets. So any data imputed by the student, is that imputed or imputed?
Inputted.
It's imputed. So
Yeah.
it's
It's a typo.
input it, okay. By the student
Yeah,
into the
AI can
tool
catch that, yeah.
is, well, you can impute data also. Is the property of the student, but any
That's
output.
a question. That's really a question. That's a part of the choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, so I wasn't sure how this worked even with, work that's not even on a computer, like, who owns students' work across the board?
And that's the question. Is it the
Yeah.
student or is it the district? If you're on a student-issued device, is it the district? So that's the question for the
It's like
board.
intellectual
to-
property,
Yeah,
right?
well, and
Think
then
about
you
it.
get into that AI, you can't copyright, anything that comes out of AI, so who
even owns that?
But
A lot of companies, right, you do something on work time. it's
Well, you're
their
being paid
intellectual
though,
property,
that's
yeah.
why, because you're being paid for it. But like, if, forget computers, even a worksheet that a student fills out in their class in elementary school, it's that students though, right? Like if those parents like, I want all of their work this year, they're allowed to.
But they've
get it.
created that data on a piece of paper. They generated it
Like, I'm not sure how that works.
themselves. Once you involve the AI,
Yeah,
there's a company providing that service to you.
yeah,
That's part of the agreement of terms. When you're voluntarily entering this data saying, please do something with this.
right.
And then it's going, oh, I can do this, this, and this. There you go. Well, whose data is that now? So that's why it's a
Right.
gray area. It's not what you gave it. You gave it some bullet points and some ideas, general conclusions, and then it created something out of what you told it to do.
Right.
So those bullet points are yours, but the ones you put into it, then that's what we're talking about.
Whose is it? It's a
Yeah,
gray
who
area.
owns the data is the essential
Microsoft's, I guess.
question posed by.
Because it's, well, but it
It's-
isn't because we aren't giving them
It sounds like a great
access to
question
any
to
of
me.
our stuff though. Like, the whole point of us setting up our own AI system is that
We're not. We're
we,
using
no one
Microsoft's.
is able to access it from the outside.
But we're not setting
Well,
up our own AI. We're using Microsoft's. That's the difference.
But we're setting up boundaries that like,
For-
what kids enter into our AI isn't going into like the big AI.
No, it's going into the big AI. We're prohibiting them from, we're setting
Yeah.
lanes that they have to operate in
I got
to put it in.
Yes.
This doesn't stay
I
with
sound like
us.
200 years old.
I thought that's
In
what
the
was
big
discussed
AI.
in the last one, that
I
it
thought
would
it stays
stay.
with us.
Let me read it.
Child puts in personal information.
Let me read this
If
to
they
you.
do put in
Yeah.
personal information,
I thought
that's
it
going
stayed in
out.
the enterprise.
It goes to Microsoft. They can't use it to teach their model further, so they can't use it for model learning, but it's still in the Microsoft
Somebody else
cloud.
has it other than us.
Unless
You
you've
know,
got a
it's
data
still
center in
like
the
the
school that's
internet.
housing all the data and the AI is running from that and it's isolated from everything else, it's out there.
Yeah. If they, theoretically, if they had a major breach, that is, you
It's
know,
not theoretical,
and
it's
that's why
there.
it is addressed in the policy that, you know, students are not to put identifying data and, you know, teachers and all.
It's more of a reason to
Um,
educate the kids.
Absolutely.
And the parents.
I guess I thought, yeah, I thought it was still
I
housed
thought it
with
was,
us.
yeah.
But it's not.
thought that's it.
So,
We
all right,
need
I
our
have
own
a
data
more
center.
basic question now,
What
sorry.
was that?
We would need a data center.
Good point. That's what we have, then it would be ours.
When it's your data center that's running the AI, then you own it, you can claim copyright rights to it. It's
So
yours, it
even-
stays there, but as soon as you send it out to Microsoft, no.
So just to be clear, students generally own their work. If a kid has written an essay, they can take that with them. This is just saying if you're inputting something into these systems,
It's
that
yours.
is going to be,
Before you input
right.
it.
And when it's in here,
Yeah.
it's going to stay in there.
Okay.
That's it. Just like it's going to be in the cloud, and then that's things that are going to be in Microsoft here will be in the district system.
So, how AI works, how I think it works. If there's a class that we are legitimate, like we're going to use AI in this class, and we're going to allow the students to use AI to answer these questions, and then next year, the same class does it again. Will that get easier and easier because AI is going to be like, oh, I remember these questions, boom.
It depends on what parameters you put in. If you put in identical parameters a year later,
Yeah.
it's going to give, regardless of whether it's done it once or done it 1,000 times, it's going to give you the same data.
It doesn't learn from the year before, though. That's the difference between the open AI and the enterprise AI. Which
Got
is
it.
Ours is the enterprise. The open will take anything you input.
Yeah.
And beef itself up on it. The enterprise, it's blocked from doing
Got
that.
it.
And that's why we currently have Copilot on the district laptops, is because it is an enterprise
Okay.
AI. It's not open.
So they would go through the same learning tools of like, you know, you actually have to ask the question this way, okay.
It'll
Right.
still learn your mannerisms, like at a certain
Right.
point, you can say it in my own voice, because the more times you input your own ideas and you're asking it to massage that data, it gets a
Yeah.
feel for how you normally write things. You can say, write it in my voice, and it'll, you know, if you're typically sarcastic from what I hear.
Be all caps.
It'll generate something that's got a little zinger to it, you know?
Okay. I wrote down an idea. This is so helpful to have you up here, though. I really appreciate it. I wrote down an idea that I feel like we talked about at one point of somehow involving the students in defining the parameters for AI, knowing that they already know more than we do about it. And it just kind of like being like, because I feel like we've been successful. We had that AI committee a couple of years ago, and even the students who were involved in that wanted to learn, you know, like this is what I don't want AI to do for me. And I feel like our students, you know, by and large, well, I don't know, maybe the ones we'll pick for this for this input would be ones that hopefully would make sure that AI isn't taking over their learning. And how can we get their input, probably not for the policy, but maybe more for the AR, to say like, hey, what are you hearing? How are kids getting around our policy? You know, like I mean, maybe AI narcs, I don't know, but a nicer way of saying it. But
Right.
I just feel like they're gonna be perpetually ahead of us. And how can we capitalize on it?
We're going to continue to do what we've been doing. I think Dr. Barrios does a great job of having those individual meetings with student groups, encouraging our principals to do that, and getting their voices. We're doing that all the time, so that won't stop.
So we could do one specifically, like a session around AI.
That would be great.
But our superintendent, student advisory council, we haven't broached AI, so I just want to be
But we'll have Mr. Thomas back there. We'll put that down on the agenda for the next one.
You can make it
Perfect.
one of the topics.
The best way you can
Yes.
add it is just to continually re-examine your policy and your AR on
Yeah.
a quarterly
Right.
basis. And just
Yeah.
See where you're not hitting the goals and just readjust.
I think, you know, once again, thank you to Mr. Johnson for hearing, you know, when we first did the first read with the PSBA template. Thank you for being open to our feedback then and really working hard to make something a little more robust than what was there. I think this is a really great start. And I appreciate all of the discussion around it, acknowledging once again that, you know, it's not going to be perfect. This is the first time the district has ever had a policy on AI, and we're all not school children anymore. So, you know, and I'm really grateful for, you know, Mr. McMullen's experience sharing. I think you've been a really huge resource in just even understanding how all this works and the options that, you know, we have. And I think it's going to continue to be, based on the policies I've looked at of districts around the area, I really feel like this is going to be one of the best ones, if not the best out there. So,
And I think, thank you, to your point, I think we've made a concerted effort to really have a policy that is wider in scope than what PSBA recommended. The policy was certainly acceptable, but I think, you know, the board's desire was to try to do more. Brian, thank you, 'cause he sent me something, I still don't understand it. I didn't want to open it at
Small
first.
words, I'm sorry.
Right, 'cause my
Though
computer
have
was
to
listening to me.
Decide that last bullet point of
yes.
ours
We
or
do.
the student.
Yes, and I think we had discussed maybe reaching out to the solicitor about how that works, because I think you get yourself running around in a tail trying to figure out who actually
Yes.
nobody owns it.
It
The
depends
cloud
if
owns
it's
it.
good. If it's good, I'll own it. If it's not, it's not.
It's all yours.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so
Maybe we
maybe-
send her a question around this particular area, which she
Yeah.
highlighted, but what would be her recommendation?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so then moving forward, what other spots do we need to make a
So
decision?
there was one other area on page 8 where it asked about roles. See here where there's an insert role.
staff.
And then underneath, two paragraphs later, there's also a role that needs to be determined. Actually, two different areas.
I'm not seeing roles. Where's it mentioned in that?
Bottom of page 8.
Bottom.
That last paragraph, the 1, 2, 3, 4 line.
There's two brackets, yes. Building principal for the first one.
Oh.
Page 8,
A couple.
bottom.
Staff.
There's
staff
three
role.
different areas,
Yeah.
actually.
So if
Well,
we
what-
look.
the first
First,
one,
look
where
at the
is the
second green paragraph.
Oh, the first one's up there. Oh.
Yeah,
Oh, I was looking,
And then go two down from there.
got it.
and
Okay.
notwithstanding specific rules, the AI wearables while on school campus are participating in activities. So
What
who would
makes
give
sense for you guys?
permission for that?
What makes, I mean, what's your chain of command? Principal?
Yeah, I think the first person to really review it would be certainly the principal. And I think you have to have a couple cabinet members that you select to be that, that second level, similar to like Title IX. You have the principal who's the investigator, and then ultimately it comes to me to be what they call the decision maker. So I think that similar style format would probably work for this.
In the high school, would it be the grade principal, or would it be the main principal?
I would prefer it to be
Main.
whomever is the main.
Okay,
I think that sounds reasonable. Yeah. I think really in all of them, I'm inclined to say the main principle if that is what you would be interested in.
Absolutely.
when that comes to the main principal, would the main principal then inform you, okay, before any decision, would inform
Yes.
you, include you also, okay, so it's not just a decision that the principal's making in isolation?
Correct.
They, okay, they tell you, okay.
Be interesting to see how many we get a year.
Well, I think the
Have to
kids,
change it if that's.
the kids are smarter, so I'm not sure.
Oh, when the number dips, that's an
That's-
indicator to reevaluate.
Yeah, that's why the policy will be reviewed regularly.
Right.
But I don't know, like,
Or they're
would
being
we,
more honest.
if we look at that last paragraph, that bottom one there, I don't know if the principal would be the person to investigate the accuracy of our AI generation, output generated by the AI detection tool.
Would it
Oh,
start
provide
there
the
and
ass-
then they go to, start at
Yeah,
the
like-
principal and then go up the chain?
Most likely it would come to the teacher first, obviously, because they're reviewing the materials. And then that teacher may share something with either the grade level administrator or the principal, whomever they can get to first probably, or even a colleague. And then at some point, that principal would reach out to us. I'm not going to analyze it, because what do I know? But I'm going to walk 3 doors down and talk to Dan Lazoche, the IT director, and get him to get involved with this, and maybe we'll consult with Mr. McMullen for free.
It would be the same thing if a student was
Yeah.
accused of cheating.
Right.
For either teacher, it would go to their grade level principal, to the building principal, and then it would go to my office, essentially.
Okay,
So
so,
that should be.
It's the same as
Consistent to-
if it was any academic integrity.
so in that last paragraph, the, if a parent or student wishes to appeal what was found in the AI detection tool, they would first contact their grade principal. The grade principal would investigate the accuracy and provide the assessment to the district, to the building principal. Is that what we would do? Or
I think it
Would
would
that be
start
in
at
the
the
policy
building.
or the AR?
it would start the,
That
provide,
level of specificity should go into the AR. I think we keep this
Oh.
Should
broad.
be more general, I think.
Yeah.
It'd be their building administrator and then to their district administrator.
So this shouldn't this not be in the policy?
I was just going to suggest that.
Because then
Yeah.
you're tagging yourself with that, and if
I
it
mean,
changes.
we could certainly, again, these are recommendations.
Yeah, no, I
However,
understand.
these are things
Can you leave it just-
that we could tweak.
Remove
Okay.
add appropriate role from that, say the district shall investigate the accuracy,
And you can,
period.
per,
There you go.
per administrative
I like that.
regulation.
And then in the AR, you call out specifically who may or may not.
because you're really guessing at this point now. It's good.
Yeah.
You know, you may get 100 of them a year, you may get one, you know.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Brian. I like that.
And in the
Okay.
beginning, it might be appropriate to just circle the wagons and get everyone involved so that everyone that could be involved is involved in the first couple, so they figure out which is the best way to proceed from there. You can
So that
amend
paragraph
the
would
AR
kind
as
of
needed.
stop, they may appeal such decision as defined in administrative regulation or something like that. Like, and then that second
It
sentence would go
eliminates the
away.
need, right.
Alright.
I
like that.
First read the
Oh, that's good. Where
First read
else?
is the third.
Is that what happens now?
Iteration.
Would it have to go back to first read then?
Just those changes.
I don't think so, because there's two items that we really need to get reviewed by Elizabeth again. And then we've already made a decision on how we want to frame this, so I don't think there needs to be another first reading. I think she'll make a recommendation. I think the biggest issue was that first area on page 7 that we reviewed. I think we can certainly move to a second reading while working on an AR, but I wouldn't recommend finalizing an AR until we finalize the policy.
That makes sense.
Sounds good. I think that sounds reasonable. Does that, everyone's good with that? Okay.
Well, I'm not done.
What do you got?
Well,
Keep it
something
rolling.
simple. It's just to review the policy update plan. It was on
Oh,
the
yeah.
agenda. And again, the policy update plan just simply states the policy that we just reviewed for first reading. The next piece of this is recently board-approved policies. And then the second page is really some policies that we need to look at come the fall, August, September of next year. But if you remember, we talked about slowly and methodically going through an AI policy for students and then an AI policy for staff. So the next meeting will include an AI second reading for this policy and then a first reading for the AI policy for the staff. That's all I have.
You're right, that was quick.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Thanks, everyone, for the great discussion around this. And our next policy meeting is on Tuesday, June 2nd. Thank you.